There's a version of this summer where Vinicius Jr. never plays for Real Madrid again, where the club that built itself around him for 7 years decides the fight isn't worth it anymore, and lets him walk. That version almost happened. And the strangest part is, it wasn't a rival club that pushed him out the door. It was his own. After digging through exactly how this actually unfolded, the contract stalemate, the reduced role under a new manager, the real offer sitting on the table from Arsenal, one thing becomes clear. Real Madrid didn't nearly lose Vinicius Jr. by accident. They came close to losing him on purpose. Let's go back to where this story actually starts, because it explains everything that came after. July 2018. An 18-year-old Brazilian forward arrives from Flamengo for 45 million euros, and the man who flies in with him to help make the announcement is Ronaldo, the Brazilian, who tells the room this kid is the biggest prospect in Brazilian football. Vinicius stands next to Florentino Perez and says he's ready to sacrifice everything to prove he deserves the opportunity. Nobody in that room is thinking about a summer 7 years later where the club is quietly preparing to let him go. Over the next several seasons, Vinicius becomes exactly what that day promised. He grows from a raw, occasionally wasteful teenager into one of the most feared attackers in world football, the kind of player who could take a game away from you in a single run. A Champions League title in 2022, scored in a final against Liverpool that made him a Real Madrid legend on the spot. A Ballon d'Or runner-up finish, the closest a Real Madrid player had come to the biggest individual prize in the sport in years. 9 trophies in total. A contract extension signed all the way through 2027, at a time when nobody at the club had any reason to think twice about his future there. For a stretch of years, Vinicius wasn't just part of the project. He was the project. Then 2 things happen that quietly start pulling that certainty apart. The first is Kylian Mbappe. When Mbappe finally joins Real Madrid in 2024, after years of transfer speculation that had followed him for what felt like half a decade, it doesn't just add a superstar to the squad. It adds a direct rival for the exact spaces on the pitch that had belonged to Vinicius alone, the left side of attack, the responsibility of carrying the team's biggest moments, the marketing spotlight that comes with being the face of Real Madrid. Suddenly, the team that had been built to make him the center of everything has another man just as capable of being the center of everything, and only one ball to share between them. The second is a change in the dugout. A new manager comes in, and the relationship between him and Vinicius never quite settles the way the club needs it to. Reports at the time describe a player who goes from being the face of the entire project to fighting just to stay on the pitch, kept on for a full 90 minutes in only a handful of appearances under the new regime. For a player who had spent years as the undisputed heartbeat of the team, that's not just a tactical adjustment. That's a demotion, playing out in public, every single week, in front of the exact fan base that used to chant his name. And this is where the contract situation stops being a formality and starts becoming a genuine crisis. Vinicius's deal runs until 2027, but Real Madrid don't want a repeat of what nearly happened with other stars on expiring contracts before, watching them run their deals down and leave for nothing, so they push hard for an extension well ahead of time. The number they put on the table is reported at around 20 million euros a year. Vinicius, according to multiple reports, wants closer to 30 million, in line with what he believes his standing in the game is worth, especially after everything he'd already delivered. Neither side moves. Months pass. 18 months of talks, by some accounts, without a resolution, while the players' role on the pitch keeps shrinking in plain sight.
The guy did all of his talking with his finishing. That's what I want to see. I'm going to throw this out there. This is a little bit crazy. Vinicius Jr. might just be an impact player off the bench, because they certainly can't play together, as far as I'm concerned, Kylian Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. That chemistry's not quite there, but...
So the club draws a line. Reports at the time describe an ultimatum delivered directly to his camp. Sign the renewal on the terms being offered, or Real Madrid will consider selling him that summer. Not a threat made in anger, not a leaked story designed to apply pressure through the press. A goal set with purpose is a dream with clarity. Was actually worth the disruption it was causing behind the scenes. And that's the exact moment Arsenal step into the picture.
Vinicius Jr., I know you probably don't want to talk about him specifically, but can the fans still expect more signings before the start of the season?
Well, we are very active trying to improve and evolve the team, that's clear. We expect to have movements in the next few weeks, obviously, because we want to get better like anybody else, and you just can see the transfer market and our opponents, what we are doing. we won't sit still, and we are very ambitious what we want to do.
And I must ask you, when's Vinny joining?
Arsenal are hunting for a left winger. Their existing options aren't converting the way the club needs, and Vinicius, even in a reduced role at Real Madrid, is still one of the most dangerous attacking players in world football, the kind of name that changes how every other club in the league has to plan for you. Reports describe Arsenal moving quickly and seriously, not just floating interest through an agent's phone call, but entering direct talks with his representatives. They make it clear he'd be central to Mikel Arteta's plans, not a squad rotation option brought in to sit on the bench. Arsenal reportedly put an offer of 120 million euros on the table. Real Madrid, even in a selling mood, refused to let their asset go cheaply, demanding somewhere between 150 and 170 million, a gap that on paper should have killed the conversation before it even properly started. Here's the detail that tells you how serious this actually got. Arsenal reportedly met Vinicius's wage demands, the exact number Real Madrid had refused to pay him for 18 months. For a stretch of days, by several accounts, Vinicius was genuinely, seriously weighing whether to leave the only club he'd known since he was 18 years old, for a Premier League club willing to pay him what his own club wouldn't. Think about what that actually means. Not a disgruntled player looking for a convenient exit to force through a move he'd already decided on. A genuine crossroads with a club willing to let its most decorated attacker in a decade go, over a wage gap that Arsenal were prepared to close without blinking.
Vinicius Junior, he's worked both teams, hasn't he? He's gone, right, Arsenal interested, they're going to give me so-and-so and so-and-so. He's probably wanted to stay around Madrid, but he's used Arsenal as a weapon to say, well, this is what you've got to give me if I'm going to stay. As soon as they said, right, we get a bit worried now, he could be leaving, they've gone, right, we're going to give you the money. So he's used Arsenal to get more money.
While Real Madrid stood their ground on principle. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped.
Never in doubt, and now confirmed that Vinicius Junior is set to sign a new contract at Real Madrid. The verbal agreement is done, 6-year contract for Vini Junior yesterday.
Real Madrid and Vinicius reach an agreement. He signs a new contract extension. Whatever number finally closed the gap between 20 million and 30 million, whatever conversation finally happened behind closed doors between two sides that had spent 18 months talking past each other, the deadlock breaks. Vinicius stays. Arsenal's approach ends without a transfer, and the story that had been building for the better part of a year gets resolved in the space of what reports suggest was barely a few days once things actually started moving. So what actually changed? Nobody outside those rooms knows exactly what tipped it. Maybe Real Madrid finally blinked, deciding that letting their most valuable attacking asset walk to a direct Champions League rival
You mentioned the disappointment of Vinicius Junior. Did you ever think that was realistic, or do you think that was up?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It was quite Vinicius Junior would leave Real Madrid to go to Arsenal.
What makes me think that? Well, Arsenal are the champions of the Premier
But
League.
then
Arsenal
things
are going
go well.
to compete for the Champions League like we did last year, a couple of 12-yard kicks away from actually winning it. And Vinny had the opportunity to come to London, which is a great city, play for a massive club.
a worse outcome than paying him what he wanted all along. Maybe Vinicius himself decided that staying and fighting for his place, Real Madrid, to finally take the situation as seriously as they should have from the start, instead of letting it drift for another year and a half. Whatever the actual reason turns out to be, this is the part worth sitting with. For a summer, one of the biggest clubs in the world was genuinely prepared to sell one of its own greatest modern players. Not because a rival poached him, not because of a scandal, but because of a wage disagreement and a manager who never fully trusted him with the ball. Vinicius didn't nearly leave Real Madrid. Real Madrid nearly let him go. So maybe the real question isn't why Arsenal wanted him. Any club in world football would want him, and most would have paid whatever it took to get him.
He's a massive diva. I don't like it. It would be amazing for the Premier League to have a superstar on that level in terms of global appeal, blah, 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 all that stuff. I don't like it. I don't think it suits the way that Arsenal play. I don't think his personality suits Arteta. He's a massive diva in regard to like what he wants, what he needs. I don't think he would buy into the collective, and now that would be something new for Arteta to have to deal with, right?
The real question is why it ever got this close at all. Why a club with Real Madrid's history and Real Madrid's resources let a standoff over a few million euros a year almost cost them a player they spent 7 years building an entire era around. I want to know what you actually think. If Vinicius had gone through with it and actually left, do you think he ends up better off at Arsenal? Or does his entire legacy only mean what it means today because he stayed and fought for his place at the Bernabeu? And how many more players right now do you think are sitting in exactly this position? One stalled contract renewal away from a summer nobody sees coming until it's already happening. Thanks for watching. If you like this, another one's waiting right here.